Hi, Yuki. Thanks for joining the podcast. I think it will be interesting on like how I should be introducing you, right? Because you have been a fellow hubber, you have been author of a couple of books, recent being on the GenAI, which is like hot topic these days. And you've also been a board member for InnerSource Commons. Can you do me a favor and introduce yourself?
Yeah, I'm Yuki, a senior customer architect, customer success architect at GitHub, and also I'm a vice president of the InnerSource Commons Foundation. So I'm big fan of InnerSource and also advocating InnerSource in Japan and also globally. So I'm very glad to join this podcast.
Thanks. Yuki, let's start with the foundation. What is inner sourcing and why is it so important as we speak now in the current landscape?
Sure. InnerSource is the application of open source principles to company internal software development. So in short, so let's do open source inside is the kind of inner source because in the especially enterprise organization, there are so many silos inside. So many people are developing their own things in their team, specifically in their own team. It's very hard to communicate, and also it's very easy to make a situation where so many reinventing wheel is happening. So yeah, inner source will prevent from recreating the same thing in the organization, and also make it smooth the communication inside.
Now, how old is this concept, Yuki? Is it something new? Or I know that GitHub, like we have been talking about inner sourcing along, but tell me a little bit on the history side, how old is this concept?
So yeah, let me begin with the term open source. So open source is not new, right? But actually, inner source is also not new. So in 2000, Tim O'Reilly coined the term inner source, but actually at the time it didn't get any traction because probably there are not so many situations happened at the time where so many organizational silos are there. But in 2020 or something, after 2015, actually, the InnerSource Commons Foundation was founded. At that moment, so many companies, there are so many silos, and people are struggling to collaborate within the organization. So that's why InnerSource is kind of gaining some traction right now. And also, so many people are trying to solve those organizational issues, structural issues by using inner source.
You mentioned about the inner source commons, right? So what is the agenda for inner source commons?
Yeah. So there are several things. Actually, but main purpose is to serve the practitioners of inner source. So inner source, as I said, the inner source is not new, but without the term inner source, there are so many people who are practicing inner source by not using the term inner source, right? But actually our kind of aim for as the foundation is to build a hub for inner source practitioners, because I think to create the momentum of inner source, it's very important to be hub. There is a hub to communicate about by using the same term and then communicate and sharing the idea of inner source. And also this will flourish the term inner source, and also at the same time, this will improve the communication inside the organization.
Nice, great initiative for sure.
Yeah.
When we talk about inner source, like there is a myth around like whether the concept is applicable for a particular size of the company, right? For example, is it applicable only for the digital natives? Is it applicable for traditional enterprises? What is your take on the inner sourcing? Like, where is it applicable?
Yeah. My take is like, inner source can be applicable for everyone actually, but agenda might be different, might vary. So because so many enterprise companies try to do inner source for the sake of kind of making some transparency in the organization, or maybe breaking down the silos. But for digital native companies, there are no certain issue like this. So for instance, if the company has 100 employees and then they are communicating very smoothly, So there's no certain issue about breaking down the organizational silo. InnerSource will drive the way of communication in a very transparent way, and also I think the collaborative culture is very important thing for those organizations. So yeah, if someone heard InnerSource as a term of breaking down silos, so it kind of very one part of the thing of InnerSource. InnerSource can be multiple. InnerSource can provide multiple benefits for the organization.
Mhm. So you talked about brewing the culture within, right?
Yep.
Are there specific techniques that an enterprise owner can use for promoting inner source within their company?
Yeah, we as the InnerSource Commons Foundation developed so many patterns of InnerSource, which is called InnerSource patterns. So if you search InnerSource patterns on Google or Bing, actually you can see so many patterns and practices of InnerSource. But my recommendation in here is to start with very small thing, like creating a readme.md file with more detailed information, or maybe preparing for contributing.md file. So people usually have readme.md file with less information, or people have there is no clue if they don't have any they can't find any information about how to contribute to this repository. So if there are no such information, people will not think about this repository is contributable. So that's why preparing for contributing.md is essential part. Or maybe you can include these kind of essence in a readme.md file as well. So
yeah, it's interesting to say that it's interesting that you talked about the readme.md, right? Like it's such a small step for increasing the collaboration. It's like inviting someone to say, hey, come into my house, right? It's like that.
right.
It's such a small step, but increases the collaboration heavily. Very nice, very nice. Um, you have been in this journey for quite some time. Like you have been working with all kind of enterprises. You have been promoting the inner source through multiple events, etc. Can you think about a successful implementation of inner sourcing within an enterprise? Anything that's public which you want to talk about, which you want to showcase?
Sure. Yeah, there are several types of the successful cases. So I don't list any company's name here. But some of the case in Japanese companies can drive the transparent collaboration by using term inner source. So this, I mean, the inner source word, term of inner source, could deepen their understanding of they should do some collaboration inside the companies. And also, it's kind of very small start. And in some from the communication perspective, they're kind of trying to be successful, and also by adopting those collaboration, actually they see some of the seed of the inner source project inside the organization, and some of the employees started actual collaboration of inner source. Then actually by using this term, this will make it smooth how they communicate inside the organization. And also in other cases, so actually successful inner source, when it comes to successful inner source, sometimes people imagine that there are hundreds or maybe thousands of inner source repositories in the organization, but actually it's not. So our usual successful inner source projects is like a handful famous repository inside the companies, or I mean, for instance, shareable libraries, or maybe depend which has very much dependency for any of the project inside the company. For instance, the UI parts, or maybe some of the middleware inside the organization. As I said, that people imagine that successful inner source should be massive inner source, but actually, when implementing inner source, you can define the boundary. For instance, the enterprise setting, probably there might be so many subsidiaries or maybe legal entity under the parent companies, and then people think that probably we can't share some of the resources with other legal entities, it's fine. So you can still do inner source with your organization. So in successful cases, people will understand these kind of boundaries and restriction inside the organization, and then also think about how they can get the best out of the culture inner source and then implement in the specific boundary. So it's great successful cases. It could be,
Yuki, in the large enterprises we work with, right? Like, if you think about open source, there is typically an open source office within the enterprise who takes care of all these initiatives related to open source. And usually large enterprises have these lot of processes also, right? Like as to like how one should do open source, how it is regulated, more from legal terms, etc., etc. So have you seen enterprises like where they have a separate setup similar to open source office who promote inner source? Like, have you seen that kind of establishment?
Yeah, definitely. So there is the office called ISPO,
Yeah.
which stands for Inner Source Program Office.
Okay, just
Usually these ISPO belongs to open source program office team.
Okay, got it.
Or maybe in some cases, people are starting talking about inner source in the Cloud Center of Excellence department or maybe group. Or it could be kind of productivity office or something like this under the city office. So there are several patterns, but at least people who are taking care of GitHub or maybe productivity in terms of in the context of development might take care of the idea inner source.
It's interesting that you touched upon the term productivity, right? That's a hot topic. Whenever we bring in any kind of change, especially to the enterprises, they talk about productivity and they also talk about why we have to do it, what doesn't it mean, what isn't it for me, etc.
Yeah, actually, there are several patterns where they are located. So actually, those does inner source for the sake of kind of try to maximize their competitive advantages.
Right.
They tend to start the inner source program in inner source program office or maybe under the OSPO department or team. But if they want to reduce the costs of development, or maybe if they want to prevent the reinventing the wheel, actually they want to start inner source sometimes in a department of the CTO office or maybe productivity office.
So you mentioned about the cost saving because like you get more people to collaborate, and you also talked about promoting reuse, right? Like one team has developed and you're able to inner source it with other teams. Are these the two main advantages of inner sourcing for large enterprises? Are these the two topics which interest the business, or you can think of anything else?
There are so many aspects actually. So preventing reinventing the wheel is the one of the biggest one,
Right.
and also improve the collaboration. Collaboration improvement. I mean, might be the also the biggest one. And also some company wanna do inner source in order to prepare for open source. So in some companies, people want to do open source, but actually their department or maybe team are not ready for open source collaboration. So in that case, they cultivate the open source-ish culture inside, and then they get used to the collaboration way of open source by using inner source and then ship to the open source world. Yeah, it's also the beneficial case of implementing inner source.
I never thought in that angle actually. You're saying that this could be a stepping stone even before you go for open source. Wow, okay. It's like there's a different advantage, right? Like before you go to open source, you warm up with inner source, make sure that your team is comfortable, make sure that your governance policies are right. Wow. Okay. So it's not just inner source, it could be a stepping stone for open source. Wow. Right. Yeah. Um, you talked about the patterns, right? The InnerSource pattern. Like, are you able to deep dive on one or two patterns that can help us understand the implementation?
Sure. Yeah. So there are several patterns in the patterns book. At least, I think 24 patterns,
Wow.
matured pattern is available on the web page. Web book. Yeah, and also it includes so many types of patterns, including the more technical one or maybe organizational one, and then one for the beginner of InnerSource. And also, as a InnerSource Commons Foundation, try to build more concrete roadmap for the InnerSource practitioners or maybe beginners of the InnerSource. So, yeah, for instance, there is a pattern called mature model. So InnerSource maturity model is the one for those who want to assess their culture inside. Yeah, actually, in some cases, people don't know where to start. So actually,
Most of the time.
yeah, InnerSource maturity model works fine for those scenario.
Hmm.
And also the ones for maintenance culture, which is called trusted committer, is the most important thing for the InnerSource culture. In some cases, actually, in other foundation or maybe open source world, there are specific role name, for instance, maintainer or committers. So many organizations name differently, actually, to be honest. But in InnerSource world, there is the maintainer role called trusted committer, because you are collaborating inside the company, and then you need to care about the corporate setting. So, for instance, some people might leave the company, or maybe some people might change the role, or maybe some of the people might promote and then go to management role, and then they can't manage the repository anymore. So, trusted committer includes some of the retirement process or those kind of corporate setting models. So, actually, if you want to place a maintainer for certain repository, I do recommend to kind of implement trusted committer in your repository.
Yep. Okay. And when I know that InnerSource Commons have been like doing a lot of events and they've been awesome in evangelizing the concept of inner sourcing across, right? Have you seen some kind of a distribution across the globe as to like this particular region is more comfortable with inner sourcing? And do you have any thought in that? Like
So specifically, your question is about
which
for instance,
country or region in the world is more open for inner sourcing? Like
um,
I don't know if you thought about that.
yeah. So to be honest, actually, I see very same inner source at the globally sometimes. So
Right. Right.
yeah, actually in Japan company. So actually Japanese company consider themselves special. Yeah, actually to be honest, every company is special. So actually so many people have typical problem on inner source stack. Yeah, so for instance, the transfer pricing. So if the source code travel over the sea, so it causes some problem about the trading policy. And also some of the management accounting stuff might be the problem for some companies. And then also profit sharing across the legal entities might be the case. Yeah, there are typical blockers for adopting inner source, but actually what I see in, for instance, the inner source meetup, or maybe when I face so many companies, the problem is kind of very similar. So some people have some problem on legal related stuff, and also some of the company has the issue about collaboration or maybe organizational structure. So yeah, and also there are kind of similarity about with some of the idea, for instance, platform engineering, DevOps, and XP extreme programming. So yeah, and then people have different idea, and then also people have different problem. But inner source commons is here to discuss about it with the same term, inner source. So that's why we connect the word inner and source together to create our inner source as a term.
That's great. I'm really glad that you have a forum where people can come and clarify their doubts. Enterprises can come and approach you. In terms of the InnerSource Commons itself, are you, I don't know how to ask this, like it's, for example, like can enterprises come and approach you saying, hey, I am interested in inner sourcing. How can InnerSource Commons help? Like, do you have set of resources? Like, for example, can you go and into their enterprise and offer your service? Is that model available, or are you more into evangelizing alone?
Yeah, InnerSource is the hub for InnerSource practitioners, and then everyone can join our Slack channel and then starting the conversation and asking the questions. So, but actually, we don't provide any kind
So,
of professional services
got it.
related.
Got it.
But
Maybe in the near future.
our community members, including the foundation members and also board members, are very supportive and can help you on board on InnerSource. So actually, yeah, I do recommend to join our Slack channel to start sharing your problem about your organization. And in addition to that, so actually we cooperate with the Chatham House rule. So actually, some of the conversation are kind of available, and also if you're considered to discuss about your internal issues or maybe corporate issues, actually our environment is very safe to discuss about it. So that's kind of good point for our foundation.
So, what are the plans for InnerSource Commons next? Like, how are you going to take it to the next level? Are there any initiatives in motion? Anything in the work?
Yeah. So as I started the InnerSource Commons downstream community in Japan, there are so many other activities around the world. For instance, in Brazil or maybe Latam. So there, the Latam InnerSource community has started recently, and also in French-speaking region, in InnerSource Commons Foundation's Slack channel, we have France channel, and also in addition to that, recently African community has started. So there are a bunch of opportunities out there about InnerSource practitioners, and also we can help that. So this is the huge opportunity in front of us at the foundation. And then also other opportunity would be we can make it more concrete, our kind of resources and also, of course, patterns as well. So sometimes we are dealing with kind of very difficult corporate setting issues. For instance, as I listed, transfer pricing, profit sharing, and those management accounting stuff. So it's kind of hard for so many people to jump in. But InnerSource is something we can get started right now.
Right.
Because InnerSource itself is culture, and then once you kind of understand the way of collaboration of InnerSource, you will understand how beautiful it is and how easy it is as well. So just providing readme.md and contributing.md is kind of easy step, right? So we want to make our resources more helpful and more kind of easy to understand, or yeah, this is something we should do as the foundation.
I think we have been talking a lot about the enterprises also, right? Like why it is beneficial for them. When you talk to developers about inner sourcing, what resonates well with them? Like, why do you think they should do inner sourcing?
Yeah. So the answer is very simple. If you want to work in the very transparent environment, you should do that. And in some cases, people usually say like, I want to work for Google, or maybe I want to work for GAFA, the big tech companies, because probably the environment and also developer experience out there is wonderful. So if you want to create your fantastic developer experience inside the company, probably you can start to doing that, and then you can start brewing those kind of culture by yourself. So that's InnerSource, or InnerSource, and also as well as open source is kind of bottom up stuff. So people need to change their mind, and also people need to start by themselves. So InnerSource is something like leader force us to do that. So it's something something we want to study. So if you want to work in the transparent organization and more, if you want to embrace more collaborative culture, it is beneficial to study InnerSource for you.
When I speak with some of the employees in big companies, they always struggle to, I mean, not always, like sometimes struggle to get projects of their interest, right? For example, they might be working in traditional applications or working in support projects, and they are very much interested in doing some projects related to Gen AI. I think inner sourcing, open sourcing helps there. Like you can try out your passion in that company by contributing, and also that way, like you're able to fulfill your passion also. That resonates very well with the developers I speak to, at least.
Yeah.
We are almost near the end of the podcast. Interested in knowing, like, how does one get abreast with the events that you're doing as part of InnerSource Commons? Any special resources that you would like to share with newbies for inner sourcing?
Yeah, there are several resources. So first, the good resource might be especially for beginner of the inner source is inner source learning path. So in inner source, you will see some of the resources in the list, and inner source learning path is kind of very good resources for you to get started with inner source. And then there are several books, including InnerSource patterns. But apart from that, there are a book called Getting Started with InnerSource, authored by Andy Oram, the ex O'Reilly editor. And also the Silona Bonwald wrote the book Understanding the InnerSource Checklist. If you want to start your InnerSource project, and if you want to know what to cover to start InnerSource, actually it's the great resources to read about it.
That's fantastic, Yuki. Thanks a lot. As a closing thought, tell me about you as to like why you are passionate about this topic and why are you contributing this outside your work? I know that you're stressed. Why are you contributing? What keeps you awake for contributing to this good cause?
Yeah, thank you for asking it. So, yeah, my InnerSource journey started at my role as a cloud solution architect at Microsoft. So at the time, actually, I was dealing with so many DevOps related stuff, and I had so many manufacturing industry customer in Japan. So, and also I was very passionate about DevOps at the time, and I tried to introduce DevOps in the manufacturing industries. But as you know that in manufacturing companies, there are so many IoT related project, or maybe they're old project, or in some cases, DevOps was not appreciated. And also, at the same time, I see so many great engineers, skillful engineer working in silos and kind of stressful environment. So I really wanted to change that. So, wow. And after knowing the concept of InnerSource, I thought, oh, this is it. So InnerSource, especially for those who are working in R&D department, research and development department, actually, they're perfect fit. It's very perfect fit for InnerSource. So they want to utilize their competitive advantage inside the company in a great way by sharing their resources with other departments to maximize the value of their resources. And then also, InnerSource, in some cases, manufacturing company has a ISPO department or those kind of related stuff inside already. So it's great for them, and also it's easier for them to introduce InnerSource culture. So that's why I'm very passionate about InnerSource. And then in Japan, it's a kind of manufacturing country. So there are so many good manufacturing companies. And then I don't want to see that so many employees in certain great companies working in silos and with a stressful environment. So that's why I started to advocate InnerSource. But after studying the InnerSource journey, I realized that Japan is not only the case. Everyone around the world has same issues. So that's why do InnerSource activity and also try to maximize the value of InnerSource around the world. So yeah, that's why.
That's awesome, Yuki. Like that's very inspiring as well. Like you are fighting for a great cause. You and your team like have been doing great job in InnerSource Commons, and I'm sure like the community will help you. I mean, will thank you for that, right? Thanks for joining this podcast
Thank you.
and like sharing all these details. Wonderful meeting.
Yeah, thank
Thanks
you
a
very
lot.
much.